so much for showing up and coming today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. We are very excited to have you here because this is the very first event of this kind. This is CyberSMART Cities Tampa. And what CyberSMART Cities is a product about teaching you how infrastructure and businesses come together from the very beginning stages to what you experience on a regular basis, all depend on security. How many of you are taking cybersecurity or interested in cybersecurity courses in the future? All right, awesome. What often happens with security is that security is the last step. You build something, and then you're like, let's make it secure. And what the Department of Defense really wants us to think about is how, when we are building something, we actually have to think about security from the very beginning stages. From where the part is made, to what software you will need to make it work, to how will people be safe when using it. Every step along the way, security should be involved. So I'm going to introduce myself. Our panels are going to give an introduction of who they are. We're going to pass the microphone so that we make sure we get a good audio take for the recording, and then get started. My name is Brandy Jackson. I am a 23-year STEM educator. That means just a few years ago, I was just like your teacher sitting in front of your classrooms teaching these classes. But I noticed about 10 years ago how much technology was coming into the classroom, and I had a very deep concern about what that did for your data privacy. As I started doing more research into it, I found out that a lot of products put your data at risk. And the most valuable identity data you can steal is a teenager's, because you can create it their own and you only have to wait like a year or two until it's very useful. So I went on a journey to do that and built my company, Scoutlier, which is where all the curriculum for this is built in. And then along the way, I made a lot of really awesome friends that work in all different areas. And so we're gonna have them introduce themselves.
Good morning, I'm Larshay Johnson. I'm an electrical engineer. I currently work in Department of Defense. It's been 8+ years. Out of high school, I did not know what I wanted to be, but as early as 7 or 8 years old, I loved taking things apart. So coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to start a family, so I had a son, and then a year later, I decided to go to college. I didn't go right into university. I started at a community college where I got an AA degree, and then decided that I wanted to do something more technical. So I was just kind of trying to review what I was passionate about, and then being a kid and loving electronics came back to me. So then I decided to take another 2-year course at the University of Hillsborough Community College right here in Tampa for computer engineering technology. I loved that program so much that my professor said, well, if you love this stuff so much, go become an electrical engineer. And so I enrolled at the University of Florida in 2016, and it was a lot harder to get through, but I absolutely loved it. And coming out of that, I got my first engineering job in the Department of Defense, where I currently work at one of the companies that's in the top 5 for aerospace and defense. And I currently run my own LLC where I build STEM kits and get to work with cool people like Brandy and other people on the panel to provide an introduction to electronics to kids as early as elementary. And so that's one of the cool things that I like when I am not in my corporate job. But the route to where I got was scenic. There was a lot of fails and a lot of successes to get there. There's never a straight line coming right out of high school, getting into your first salary job, but you learn a lot in each step. So I'm happy to be here and glad to speak to you guys.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jen Clark, and I am a subject matter expert in the utility field. So 17 years experience calling and working for the utility side. So electric, gas, and water sounds really fun, right? But when I was in school, I really didn't know a direction either. When I was your age, thought I wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to lead, and I wanted to also educate. So when I got my first job right out of college with a marketing major, I worked for a startup company, and I had a mentor that said, hey, if I teach you everything about the utility space, are you willing to learn? And I said, 100%. And that started my career in the utility space. So now 17 years later, I've been in all different parts and pieces and multifacets with utilities, from smart meters to power grid, as well as energy efficiency, and talking about LED lights, all the way now to where I work for a company called eSmart Systems, which uses drone and AI technology to do old processes within the utility and make them new, and also get some of you guys engaged in the utility space where you may not have thought about going. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good morning. My name is Shamir Sidney, and I am a human resource professional, as well as a career and leadership development coach, but I'm also an Air Force veteran. So I will say, some of the same things that these young ladies next to me just mentioned, as well as that your career is never a straight line. I have done so many, different things, but I've worked in higher education for over 18 years, and I also worked in technology and ed tech and cybersecurity. So had a lot of, fun in those careers, but I built my career around human resources and training and leadership development. So those are some of the things that I've done. But I'm happy to be here, excited to answer some of your questions, and look forward to seeing what you all do in your futures.
Good morning. I'm Scudder. I'm a senior software engineer at Insight. My path has been equally odd. In high school, I thought I was going to go into TV production. I was on a team that helped create a show that it's possible some of you might have even been involved in for Fox 13, called Fox 13 Magazine, because apparently it's still on the air 25 years later. After high school, I realized, no, that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. I got an AA from St. Pete College and stopped formal education there. I did a lot of learning on my own, decided software was the way to go. I've been doing that now for almost 20 years. I've worked on a lot of interesting projects, oftentimes where security is the point. The Department of Law Enforcement for the state of California and the IRS, and so security is definitely important. I'm glad we're doing this.
Good morning. My name is Martika Jones. I am founder and CEO of Boop, which is a digital business card platform, and we're also an NFC RFID technology company. So just like everybody else, I definitely had a different path before going into the technology space. I started off as an orchestral musician. So since I was 12 years old, I played trombone. Yes, I know it's probably kind of like bigger than me still to this day, but I did that for 13 years. Went to Montclair, New Jersey for that. My teachers were from Juilliard. I had quite the experience that I got to play on Broadway and do a couple of things. And I realized that that was not a very sustainable career, because if you have a gig, then you'll understand that this. If you're out of gigs, then you understand that starving artists is a very real thing. And we ended up coming to Florida in 2018. Found opportunity here. I heard about the University of Tampa. Realized that I wanted to do my own thing, go into entrepreneurship, and that's how my journey got started. So we've been doing Boop for about a year and a half. So I'm happy to be in this space, and there's still a lot to learn.
So we're going to go through a series of questions today. What this product is about, which by the way, you're the first people that will ever touch it, besides myself and my business partner, Beth, and the inventor. We actually we're focusing on smart. Does everybody know what we mean when we talk about smart technology? Right? What do you think it means?
I would say intelligent technology, or something that's supposed to adapt.
Okay, it's intelligent technology. That means it is going to track data about you and the way you use it to make decisions. So we know already that anything that is considered a smart technology is going to use Internet of Things. That's how all these different items in our house, our refrigerator, our thermostat, our cars, our watches, our earbuds, talk to one another and how they can make things happen. So what I want to make sure that we had at least that technology in there. So We're going to go through the line. In your careers, how do you see that you personally have been affected by the introduction of smart technology in your careers? Who would like to start?
How many of you have ever misplaced your cell phone? Instant panic attack. That is how smartphones have affected me. Right now, your smartphone is basically an extension of you. It helps you to remember things that you wouldn't have to, like phone numbers. When I was a kid, we'd have to remember people's cell phone numbers. Right now, we don't have to do that. We just touch a button. So I would say having a smartphone, a device that has all this memory to do things that you don't have to remember, has greatly affected how we wake up in the morning, how we go throughout the day, having these things, not having to remember passwords. We can use our face, we can use our hands, we can use PIN codes. Just having a cell phone and having that technology in our hands has really changed the way we do things now. I know for most of you, you've never really experienced life without it. So for just having that technology now at my age is a big game changer about how you go out throughout the day. So I would say smartphones is one of the IoT devices that changes in my personal life and career.
So I would say that my career has been, like I said, focused on the utility space, but then of course a number of technologies have come up in that space. One of them that started my career was smart meters. So currently you all think, right, that, and of course TECO does, have smart meters on the majority of your homes, or you're getting one very soon. So that is a two-way communication that registers to the utility that this person's home is up and running with electricity and feeds that data back to the utility. That didn't used to happen. It used to just be a meter that recorded the data that was coming from your home, and then, I know, gas, if your electricity went off, you actually had to call the utility. They had no clue that you had a power outage based upon a storm or anything that was happening at your home. So smart meters are definitely one of the things. Like I said, right now I currently work with utilities and talking to them about an inspection of their poles and transmission towers and their substations that used to be somebody actually physically having to walk into the vicinity or climb a pole or a tower or even hang out of a helicopter to figure out what components are malfunctioning or need maintenance on those assets. But now currently we're talking about AI-powered platforms along with drone technology being able to capture those so that we don't have safety concerns and fatalities from people hanging out of the helicopters trying to get imagery from there.
Yeah, I love the smart technology on your bills, except for sometimes I feel like it's bullying me. It's like you are using more power than 75% of the people in your neighborhood.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't think I'm using 75% power more. I think you just want me to use less.
Right. Right. The roll-up of data is real, and especially on the utility side of things.
Our second question is, IoT has come along. We know it exists, how it exists in your life, how we're using it, which is great. But there's definitely been some issues of pushing innovation before thinking about security. How do you see that affecting the professional world and people's private lives?
For multiple ways, because I mentioned that I thought I was going to go into TV production, and ended up founding a company that I host a weekly tech show and had for 17 years because I didn't want to work for Fox. But anyway, so there are a lot of issues that people don't necessarily know about and have existed for a long time. My favorite oddball example was about 2 or 3 years ago. There was a group that hacked into a bunch of security camera DVRs from the early 2000s and turned them into a botnet to do a DDoS attack against a series of websites, and managed to actually take the FCC's website down for one, doing it entirely with DVRs for security cameras, which is definitely ironic because it's security cameras and it was the thing that was vulnerable. But that goes exactly to what Brandy was saying. Security is so often the last thing that's thought about, and that doesn't work. It never works. You can't build your thing and then go, oh, right, oh, dude, this is going to connect to the internet. People might try and take advantage of it. How do we fix that? You have to start with it. You can never end with it, or you end up with DVRs attacking the FCC. So that's it's an example that kind of nobody even knows happened. But there were 55,000 devices in this botnet and managed to take the FCC's website down. So yeah, it's everywhere. It doesn't matter what the product is. We think, about things that are directly tracking what you're doing, the tags you put on your keys and whatnot. But yeah, that knows where you are. But just because it doesn't know where you are or know anything about you doesn't mean that it can't
Be used in
become a
another way.
danger.
Exactly.
So with all of the artificial intelligence and everything that's happening right now, I think one of the biggest things, that can happen, in the future when it comes to that is like, you're having all this innovation, but do we have the things that can like counter that? So not being able to catch up with all of this innovation that's happening right now. So I think that's definitely like, a big concern, and like you said, with the technology that we use every single day, like our phones, the AirTags, like, people are able to like, track it. You've seen probably like those news incidences where, an AirTag was just dropped in somebody's purse and then they were able to come back and, find that person or steal their stuff or like even worse. So definitely like things to consider, just even like with our basic everyday technology.
Absolutely. It's something you have to be really mindful of. My husband is an intelligence officer, so that means his job is to actually look at things that are happening in the world and things that are getting invented and decide, hey, is this going to be safe 5-10 years down the road? How many of you have ever used like a smartwatch to like take your heartbeat or to tell you you're dehydrated or how far you're walking, right? We've all got that on our watches. Well, about 10 years ago, that technology existed, and they suggested it would be so great for our soldiers if we like put a chip in their arm. And then like if they were in danger or dehydrated, we would know and we could better protect them. And my husband was one of the great, that was like, you can't do that. You can't do that because you're going to give away like locations of where all your soldiers are. The moment that technology gets hacked, what could we do with that? And today we know that that is completely true because we're seeing people's pacemakers. Do you guys know what a pacemaker is? Like thing in a person's heart that keeps their heart beating. Those have been hacked. And you just turn it off. So, I mean, like really thinking about that IoT first is going to be so, so important. What are some examples where you have seen a lack of security first mindset negatively affect a company? Like negatively affect a company?
Well, we can talk about the Apple AirTags you brought up, which when they first released them, there was no security to them at all. They hadn't considered what the product was, even a little bit. Companies like Chipolo and stuff had already built security in, and Apple just went, it's fine. And then so what people did was they'd attach them to cars, they'd drop them in shopping bags, track you home, follow you home. There were muggings and all kinds of things, carjackings because of it, and obviously that wasn't great. They had to panic implement a solution which works. If there's I don't know if you've had one, but if there's an AirTag following you, if your phone and it or your watch and it are traveling together, you'll actually get a notification that says, hey, so there's an AirTag that's not yours that has been following you for the last 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Do you want to make it make noise so that you can find it? And of course, by doing that, they had to take some of the other security precautions off, because theoretically only the owner should be able to make it make noise, only the owner should be able to track it. Well, now you're now able to track it because, right? And it's annoying because, if you've got, say, a box that's got a computer in it that has an AirTag that's registered to your business partner, it's constantly letting me know that there's an AirTag that's following me. But it's definitely a solution. Not the best solution, but it is a solution. And they've been trying to improve it. They're tracking from Android devices now to be able to try and alert you. But it wasn't a great rollout, and we see these things all the time.
Well, I will say, just having experience in the military, I'm very big on security, so I always look at the things that might affect, our system. So in my human resources profession, I have witnessed a lot of crazy, different things when it comes to using human resource platforms. So, for example, your payroll platform, where we store all of our employees' data, where their date of births are in there, their social security cards are in there, or social security numbers are in there, and also email addresses, things like that. So personal identifiable information is usually what we call it PII. And there are phishing emails. How many of you have seen or heard of or experienced phishing emails? So sometimes there will be employees who will receive phishing emails, and they're getting really, really clever with these emails these days, because they'll send emails and they'll say, hey, I want to change my bank account number in the system, and change my pay. I want to make sure my payroll goes into this account instead of that account. And so they will ask for information, but if they're not paying attention and they respond to that beforehand, not realizing it's not coming from anyone in the leadership, chain of command, it's not coming from their email, it's coming from an email that's not even, inside of the company. Sometimes people will respond to those emails and somebody gets into that system and there's data breaches, and that can be detrimental to employees because they can now have access to your bank accounts and steal your money and your identity, and there's identity theft. So security is really, really big, and so as a human resources professional, I have seen that happen, and it's not pretty. So you want to make sure that you're connecting with your IT team and your security team immediately and setting, really good measures. So we used to have a button that on email, on Outlook, if you have a phishing email, click that button, it automatically alerts the security team, and then they're able to put in, proper measures to and investigate it and go from there.
So just like the game Grand Theft Auto, I would say car makers have forgotten to put security first. If you have a cool car that has push to start, people can steal your car. Basically, your key fob is constantly transmitting data. So there are clever people that can come to your front door, and if you have a key fob, they can intercept that frequency and unlock your car and take off with it. So I wouldn't target just one industry, but the entire car industry and any makers that have the push to start or any kind of fob connected to the car. Those cars can be stolen, and I'm hoping that these car makers are realizing that they need to implement some type of security so that you, the owner, can control when that data is transmitted, when you want to get into your car, because constantly sending out this data, it makes your car vulnerable to anyone who has a device that can intercept your transmitted fob data.
Yeah, we had a very, very good friend that she called one day and she said, my car just got stolen. I'm like, what? And she's like, no, I'm not kidding. My car is stolen. I said, is your keys in the car? She's like, no, my keys are sitting here on the front desk. I can see them. And she's like, I know it's stolen. She called the police. The police were like, there's not a whole lot we can do. We can put out an APB on it. She logged into her Ford app and she found her car. And she's like, can you pick me up and we'll go find my car? And I'm like, no, I'm not picking you up and driving over to where someone who just stole your car has your car, because that's stupid. We called the cops. The cops went and found her car, and it was a 17-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 20-year-old who had gotten on YouTube, figured out how to do it, ordered the part, stole the car, and just took it for a fun little joyride, just to see if they could. Very easy, very illegal, and because they were all over the age of 17, all felonies, because that car was over $40,000. So really thinking security first is going to be important, and understanding how quick with IoT it is to catch you is even more important.
Some companies have thought about it, and it turns out it's really hard and really expensive to do. Mercedes uses an isotope that resonates at a specific frequency, and each one's different.
Smart.
So only so many of these can possibly exist before they run out. They are stupid expensive. Don't lose the key fob because they cost like $850 to get another one. So And that's the problem, right? If you don't think about it in the beginning, and you're like, oh, look, there's this new feature. Yeah, Chat GPT. This is cool. Oh, right. It can now write those phishing emails so that the spelling mistakes go away. They sound like a person wrote them. Uh-oh. How do we fix that? Well, we just tell it, don't do that. Well, it's already been done. So it can be expensive and harmful even after you try to put a fix in place.
Exactly, and I think one of the things we really want to be talking about as we move into the CyberSMART Cities kit today is thinking about the security before you build it. Like from the point of manufacturing, to the chip design, to the software, thinking about your security first, how you're going to protect that is actually much cheaper, which Scott will explain in the workshop he's going to be running. This next question, we're going to start with Jen, because I think that this is probably your whole job. So how do you think cybersecurity is going to look in keeping our future safe? Like specifically in the utilities, there's a big idea, at least in the Department of Defense, that the next war is not going to be pew pew. It's not going to be soldiers dropping bombs, and we actually can see that happening in Ukraine. Yes, people are fighting and shooting and dropping bombs, but the way Russia has attacked most effectively is shutting down utility systems, shutting down water, shutting down power, shutting down communications, creating a system of distrust between citizens and the country that is designed to protect them. How do you see that cybersecurity is going to really affect those areas?
So I would say first and foremost that when working with utility, cybersecurity is always one of the first conversations that you have to have, when talking about a certain software platform or integrating or implementing something new in the utility space. Cybersecurity is the first thing that we talk about with multiple layers of the utility members. But it is scary. How many of you guys have gone one full day without power? Right. How many of you guys were over that after 1 hour? You're like, I am over this, and you turn the lights on anyway and they still don't come on, or you're like, try to plug in your phone and you're like, it's not charging. Well, I think the discussion here is what happens if that was reality for a long time, right? That becomes a scary thing about then your cell phone doesn't work. And taking down the power grid is so much. And here in Florida, right, we are aware of natural disasters and storms that actually happen, and then what that takes to repair the grid from there. And if we're talking about actually some sort of a war crime and actually taking down the grid as a whole, that's not going to be something that comes up in a day or a month. Or it's going to take a lot of time, right, to get back up and running. But it starts to be that you think about it more and more because it's your normal life. So now, because you have no power, the Wi-Fi towers also don't work. So you have no phone capabilities. You can't get gas because guess what? Those are all electrified now as well from the old gas pumps that we all grew up with that weren't. You can't buy groceries because all the checkout systems are electrically charged. And so we start to talk about the renewables and the backup generation and the solar side of getting into the power grid, but we're still far away from saying we can run everything here in Tampa off 100% solar panels. While that discussion is happening internally, we are not there yet. So there's a lot that needs to happen with the utilities to keep us safe and where we're at, but also to think about that 5, 10, 20-year premonition of what if, and that could happen within our grid.
I think the future for cybersecurity professionals is bright because there are so many things that we're going to need, and just tapping into some of the other industries, as Jennifer was mentioning, power grids is something I've been hearing so many things about where people are nervous and they're scared, that this can happen, and it can happen in multiple industries. And you think hospitals, for example, patients, patient care, and they can tap into, those machines, and you take away, electricity, and you take away, all those things. You've got a lot of sick patients who are, in a lot of trouble. So I feel that there's going to be a lot of innovations that are built around the way we do cybersecurity, starting from, the beginning of inventing things or, implementing systems, processes, procedures. I believe that we're going to start taking those things seriously and really looking into it, but just training more and more people in the cybersecurity profession, because there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that are vacant right now in the cybersecurity field, because there are not enough people who are trained to do the actual job. So I used to work in ed tech for things for careers for software development and cybersecurity, and that was one of the things that we focused on to help build that future of training professionals so that they can work in that field. So I think that the future is bright, and the innovations are going to really advance around cybersecurity. But I think we might go back to some old school ways of thinking too, so that we're not giving up a lot of different security. And I will give you an example. In the military, we cannot use USBs. We can't use USBs because years ago there were some situations that happened with other countries, and when they put it in, they built some devices into those USBs. They're getting information out of our systems the minute that we hook it up. Anytime that we leave a computer in the military, we have to put our CAC card, our CAC card, into a CAC reader to actually log in and log out. If you don't, that can also cause security breaches and things like that. So just a lot of different things we're going to have to go old school on, I do believe, so that we're not announcing to the world our next move that so people can see those can breach that security as well.
Well, that actually is going to bring us to like a really important question. Go ahead, you first, and then
Just to add on with the USB, also in the professional world, we are not allowed to connect any devices to our work computers, not a mouse, not headphones, nothing that is not approved by our company, because all these things that we love to buy for cheap that are made in China can come with those types of software that we aren't aware of. So that's one measure of security that we do within the professional world.
well, and that takes us exactly where I was about to go. So when you say going back to the beginning, that's what Cyber Cities Kit is all about. We're going to go back downstairs in a few minutes, and you're going to do a workshop with Scott, and then you're going to do a workshop with Larche and another member of our staff, who are going to actually get you down into the component level. How do components work together? Because you're right, there's a lot of openings in cybersecurity. There's even more openings in manufacturing. There's even more openings in electrical engineering. Because the reality is that the cybersecurity openings are there because we've allowed people offshore. When I say offshore, I mean anywhere that's not in America, right? Canada, Mexico, Russia, China, India, Budapest, anywhere in the world, South America. These are all offshore developers. A lot of our chips are made offshore. Our software is made offshore. Even our steel is made offshore. Like everything used to be, America was the place of innovation. We built it all here. But for the last 35 years, because it was cheaper to build it overseas, we did that. But now we're finding that the cost of security is so much higher. So knowing that, and knowing, like, as adults, we see the career paths we have taken, like, man, why do you think it's going to be important that at this age, these are high school kids, like, if you're 15, raise your hand. If you're 16, raise your hand. If you're 17, raise your hand. If you're 18, raise your hand. If you are over 18, raise your hand. Exactly. We have seen in our careers, I did not go in to be a teacher. I went in to be a lawyer. I failed out of college twice. Then I became a teacher and was a teacher of the year in 2 different states. My career found me. And then I found this new career where I'm inventing technology and running a technology company. But it's because of all of these skills I gained as I grew. And I really stacked skills over and over again. In fact, don't tell your guidance counselor or your parents this. I'm not really sure I learned a whole lot in college that I use in my job now. But I did learn skills from the people I met there. How do you see innovation changing? Not just in security, but in manufacturing and electrical engineering. How do you see in the next 50 years in their career paths it's going to change? This is everybody. Everybody gets to talk.
Well, in manufacturing, interestingly, a focus on security has to happen. And in a way that's different than what we've talked about There was an issue with Supercomputer, I think is the name of the company. They make servers. They make servers for everybody. Guaranteed every day, something you use is connecting to a data farm that's using one of their servers. They are designed and then assembled in the US, but manufactured in China. The motherboards for these servers were very specific, obviously, right? You design a thing, you send it off to be fabricated, you get back exactly what you asked for. Whoop, nope, not in this case. There was an extra chip added to this motherboard that was actually stealing data off the servers and sending it back to China. So nothing I can do as a software engineer is going to be able to prevent that. That was literal international espionage that was happening there. And if it weren't for the fact that this company, when they get it back, they grab every device, they look at every motherboard, they look at the schematic, and they go, what? If it hadn't been for that, these things would be in production today. And a big batch of these were headed to Apple, which is definitely not great because people have location data, as we talked about before, email information, all kinds of stuff stored with Apple. And if that stuff was being pushed to another country, that's not great.
That's really interesting because the first lesson in the CyberCities kit is actually about that exact issue.
Oh.
And there's a company here in Tampa. It's one of the it's a Fortune 500 company. That means they're printing some money, and that's what they do. They literally crack open everything and says, "Is this real?" Is what they're doing, and they're actually hiring all the time. In fact, he's supposed to be here today, but they're hiring a new CTO, and so he couldn't be here today. So thank you, Scott, for pitch hitting. But that's exactly what they do: is they put all that together, and then they buy them in surplus and keep them in warehouses here, so that when something is damaged, you can call them and get your part to fix right then,
Nice.
which I'm imagining is going to be pretty important in like the utilities.
Yeah, so I definitely see from the manufacturing side for sure, a lot of things need to come back onshore. That's just a given. Given what everyone said when it comes to security breaches and things like that, especially for with us being a tech startup, we try to source things wherever we can, but of course, going overseas is usually cheaper. But we do have those things where we have to take into consideration our chips, we're NFC, RFID, and that's, a lot of times that's mainly made in China, right? And, trying to source different manufacturers and things like that, I definitely feel like that's going to have to be easier in the near future so that we don't have to constantly, double check and, figure things out like that, so, yeah.
We also have to diversify the manufacturing line. Brandy mentioned chips. Actual ICs, integrated circuits, 97% are built on one little island called Taiwan that is currently about to be part of a global crisis that's going to create a problem for us. If 97% of all the ICs in the world are produced in one country, something happens in that country, say COVID, right? Ford was putting pickup trucks, almost finished pickup trucks during COVID, in NASCAR parking lots and tracks, but they weren't being used because they needed 7 chips that couldn't be produced because Taiwan was shut down. But Germany wasn't, Canada wasn't, large swaths of the US weren't at this time. We could have avoided that problem if literally 97%, and it's not an exaggeration, 97% of all ICs are built by one company in one country in Taiwan. Luckily, the US has put money down. Intel's building a foundry. That Taiwanese company is building a foundry, I think in Ohio. They're putting one in Germany and somewhere in South America, I don't remember. So manufacturing is going to change significantly because focusing all manufacturing of one product or most products within certain regions, as we learned over the last couple of years, not sustainable.
I would also say, as far as for the manufacturing side of things, especially in the utility, we have several items that are, I guess, compiled from things that are overseas and then things that are also manufactured here in the States. But when utilities face a lead time, the normal lead time for some of these large assets that are very expensive, that hang on the poles or that sit on the ground, are a lead time of maybe 6 months, so they can start to do their maintenance planning and understand that that needs to be changed out. But they've gone from a 6-month lead time to over 2 years. So that means if they're wanting to size or scale their grid or change components, they're now having a longer lead time to even get the assets because the manufacturing is not all here in the US. And so now from a 6-month lead time to over a 2-year lead time, that is a considerable difference with the utility space.
So really, as we're looking into when we talk about CyberSMART cities, innovation that makes our life easier is great. But we have to also think about, there's some ease we've got to give up occasionally because it's not secure for ourselves. And I think that's really, really important. And so we're gonna be transitioning downstairs, but before we go, not everyone is gonna be able to stay the rest of the day. So if there's any questions that you have, we'd like to turn the time over to you to ask any questions you want of anybody here. Anything about like, hey, wow, you took a couple years off. How'd you get back into school? What are some things you did to gain skills? Like any questions you would like to ask, we would be happy to answer them.
So what would you say are like some like soft and hard skills for like in your area? So let's just say like cybersecurity in general.
What you're gonna have to think about is how something works, how you can take it apart, and how you can put it back together. Because cybersecurity is about that. How are they going to take it apart? What is the least path of resistance to turn something off? Is it to actually turn it off or to just overwhelm the system? So understanding how things work at a component level and at a switch level inside of the software is going to be very important. And also how to deal with anxiety, because it is very stressful, and how to handle that anxiety naturally and not take it out on the people that you care about around you, because that sucks.
I think some soft skills that everyone should have, the ability to work with a diverse group of people. When you go out into the work field, everyone is not your friend, but you have to work with them regardless. You also may need to pick up some coding skills. Even if you're into hardware like I am, there are times when I need to program something or at least understand the code. So being diverse with software and how it works on hardware and vice versa would be definitely some skills. And then doing your own personal projects is definitely a great way to research something and then apply it to something physical. You'll definitely have a hands-on or be ahead if you build something yourself and can explain how it works.
I would say too, conversation and collaboration. So we all did not grow up with these awesome smart devices that are in your hands 24/7, that are stitched to you. So we had to learn to talk to people, and that for me was a skill that took me a lot of places within my career. Being able to have conversations with people, look them in the face, I think that will come a long way in the next 5 to 10 years. But then collaboration, you have to be able to work with a team of people. You know that your brain is only going to go so far. So if you want to create something really awesome, you're going to need buy-in from other people. You're going to need ideas. You're going to need creativity. You're going to need that flow and effort to get where you want to be. So keep being collaborative and keep conversing with each other.
I'm going to say ditto, because it's exactly the same. Building relationships, collaboration, coding skills, all of those things are very, very important.
So I've got two things. The first is spend time around people you disagree with. Include people in your process that disagree with you. Because if everybody's going, oh, yeah, that's where holes happen. You're guaranteed to have problems, whether they be security problems or, as we'll talk about later, an issue that Bank of America had, or as well as design. Design. Einstein said if I had 100 hours to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 99 hours defining it and the last hour solving it, because it will have solved itself by the time I've defined the problem. So spend time defining what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because if you don't know what it is you're trying to build or do or accomplish, you can't do it. And we'll talk about that downstairs too.
Two things for me. One of it is like being future focused, right? So, and also understanding like what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So that you can actually design towards that, right? And the other thing is be very good at scenario analysis. That's something that I do all the time. If you have a potential problem, like anytime that I come up with different ideas, I'm thinking, oh, well, if this happened or that happened, like what would be the outcome? So I do a lot of scenario analysis just so that you can understand every single facet, poke holes in your own stuff so that, it's actually like bulletproof. Yeah, so that's it.
You run your company's goal, would you say was the biggest hurdle for becoming an entrepreneur to actually a successful entrepreneur? What were some of those you had to face?
I'm going to answer that question, and I'm going to answer one thing we didn't answer, which I think we should have. Ladies in the room, learn to speak up. Learn to take credit for your work, because it happens a lot that you have a great idea, and shockingly enough, someone sitting next to you repeats the idea, and it all of a sudden was their idea. You need to make sure that you are documenting what you did and identifying it. That goes the same thing for minorities in the room. You need to know how to work with people that are different than you, because the fact that we as women and minorities haven't spoken up in the room has actually made some things more dangerous for us in the real world, because we weren't part of solving the problem, like Scott said. Really needing to define that, and they can't define the problem if they're not even looking at the issues that affect us. So be loud, but be cooperative, working with people, really finding an itch of people. These are all shockingly have become my friends in the last year because I built a network of people who are working together. So that's important. The biggest hurdle is building a network. Do not try to start your business all by yourself. There are really great programs. We're going to go to a space downstairs called AMROC that runs a program called Equity and Entrepreneurship. It's literally a class to go to learn how to be an entrepreneur. Decide what your business is going to be. Look at it. Do real market studies, because the issue largely is you're talking to people that agree with you and love you and want you to be successful. And they're like, you can do it, man. Just do it. And you get yourself in a lot of debt. And then you really put yourself in a hole. There is money out there to start businesses. You should bootstrap quickly and really build as you're building your business. But what helps you do that is having a network of people. Except for Jen, because we're going to pull her in. She's my friend from another network. We all know each other and are part of an equity and entrepreneurship team of people that work together. And when one of us has a problem, instead of trying to solve it all by ourselves, we call one another and be like, hey, have you dealt with this? Who do I go to? Who do I talk to? Who's going to be in my corner? Finding that network of people and learning together as a team is really important. What are your hurdles to starting your own business?
I'm going to build on that. When you're building your network, be careful of who you include in it.
Amen. Preach.
Just over the last couple of years, this little group can probably name a dozen people who we have included into various networks that have been nothing but a detriment. It made it worse. My original business partner in the media company, I didn't realize it until he was gone, but he was actually holding everything back. And thank goodness he's gone. So definitely keep an eye on who's coming into the group. I was told by, ironically, somebody who was a problem and is no longer part of our group, but he did say something smart one time. He said, hire slowly and fire quickly, and do that not just with employees, but with your advisory network as well. If somebody, don't let people in quick. And once they're in, if you start identifying red flags, cut that off quick.
So I can't stress this enough. Be careful, just like you're saying, who you partner with. Partnerships are literally like a marriage. And I'm married, so I know. So our first startup failed because I felt like our CTO at the time, he He was the guy, super experienced, had successful exits. Like, we gotta have him. The deal is, like, we needed him more than he needed us. And that's what we should have realized in the beginning. So that ended up to a lot of things because, oh yeah, today's my birthday. I'm 28 years old. And he's significantly older, more experienced, and did not take me seriously. And so, being a young founder, sometimes it can be hard being taken seriously. And at the end of the day, I was like, am I really the CEO or is he the CEO, right? And so we had to completely dissolve that company. But I can tell you, as long as you have a team and a network that stands beside you, you can literally do anything. Because within 2 weeks of that dissolution, that's how Boot was born. We literally incorporated Boot 2 weeks later and was back up and running.
So you said previously you said you should always keep your enemy not your enemies. You should keep the people you disagree with kind of close. But also you said make sure if you don't you gotta get a different consider the people that are causing a whole detriment.
Yeah.
What is the fine line between being close?
Sure. People have different ideas than you, who disagree maybe on the path towards a product, right? You're building a thing. I want to build it out of metal and you want to build it out of plastic, right? That's a good example of a conflict in the design process, in the actual discussions. However, some people you will discover are actually out to damage what you're up to. Their interests aren't aligned, right? Your example was great. You needed him more than he needed you. And so therefore, his participation was probably occasional and not necessarily in the direction that you were trying to go.
Yeah.
Aha. See? Dangerous people are predictable, which is good. Once you're able to start identifying, not just people who disagree are great. You want a variety of ideas in a room, right? That's where good ideas and good solutions come from. Because, we talk about diversity a lot, but what we don't talk about enough, I think, is diversity of experience and diversity of idea. We need a diverse solution set because, my idea and Larche's idea may be different, but together there's a middle path that's better than either one of us would have come up with.
Synergy.
But if somebody's trying to take your knees out from under you all the time, you feel like, I don't know, they're trying to use your company's success to leverage a position at Microsoft. Not at all a personal example. And so, their goals are not aligned with what the company and what the brand is trying to do, the product you're trying to build, the service you're trying to create. That's a dangerous person. That's somebody who's going to undermine what you're trying to come up with. Somebody who has got a different idea, great. Somebody who's trying to undermine what you're up to, terrible.
You didn't really have a traditional path, like schooling wise. How did you separate yourself from other people who were trying to go for the same job as you?
So my former business partner, not that one, but a different one. Mark always used to say that programmers program, and so we would hire that way. Just because you're not on the clock doesn't mean you're not working on a project. And it doesn't just work with software engineers. Everybody who's passionate about a thing does a thing, right? And so do the thing. If there's something you're interested in, for me it was software. I built, in my own time, in my late teens, early 20s, I built a platform that was featured on Tech TV. I know Tech TV doesn't exist anymore, but it became G4. I built a thing that I was passionate about that I didn't think had great market value, but I was like, it sounds like fun. I'm going to build it. And so I did. Turned out to be the third largest in the country, featured on TV. Build. Do the thing. Whatever the thing is. Read. And do projects in whatever it is. Practice. So for me, I had built, by the time I got my first paying engineering job, I had built 6 or 8 semi-high profile projects. And so I was thrown right into a high profile project with the IRS. So yeah, just separate yourself by doing. just because you didn't do it in school doesn't mean that doing didn't happen, right? Just as much experience as you can get. Places like Amrock are a great place to get experience in anything from gaming to sewing. There's a little bit of everything down there. So, find a place, find people, find a mentor. I've had a couple of great mentors throughout my life that really helped drive to where I am. So that's my recommendation. Do the thing you're passionate about. Of course.
I just thank you. That was a great answer. I just wanted to add, Jennifer reminded me, we were talking about this earlier. Shadowing as a young student is so important, because you can go out there and think that you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, a firefighter, and then you get into that field and you wake up and you open your eyes and you're like, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, right? So I think it's super important to shadow. Maybe if you don't know someone, connect with your teachers, your guidance counselor, your parents, who are working professionals, to connect you with, individuals in those industries, and set up an appointment to take time to follow them around, to shadow them, and ask them questions. How did you, same questions here, how did you get to where you're going? What steps did you take? Did you do certifications? Did you do degrees? Did you go into military? What were your experiences? So shadowing is super important. Volunteering as well, because I know sometimes there's some different funding options that you have to help pay for college here in Florida. At some of the colleges. Bright Futures. Yes. So you have to volunteer and have a certain amount of volunteer hours. I think that's also important too. You can volunteer in different areas, and that can help you kind of identify your passions and things that you really like and enjoy.
Before you leave today, you're all going to have the opportunity to do some hands-on learning, because this is an opportunity you have to actually work with real professionals in their career fields to gain real experiences. At the end, you're going to get a little certificate for it. These are the things you want to keep for yourselves. You want to keep your certificates. You want to develop micro credentials so that when people ask, how do you get the job if you didn't get the training? Those micro credentials and those stackable certificates, they're going to matter a lot, because you're going to be able to show you were here. And you get to say that you were the team that actually piloted the CyberSMART Cities kit for the Department of Defense. You 50 children are the ones who are going to do that. And so share your opinions, be honest, talk about what's going on. What would you want to see different? What would you want to see the same? That's what we've invited you here, and we're so happy to have you here. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank all of our panelists.